Man. Hey, so I'm just gonna get right into this, and I just want to know a little bit about your background. You're a kid from Lawrence, Massachusetts, which I know as the where the abolitionists came from that like created Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas, like during the not World War II, Civil War era. But how
Yeah.
is it being a Massachusetts kid, son of a father from Senegal,
Yeah.
and going to the Midwest, and just this path you've had that led you to the NBA? How was that all like? Just tell me a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of been crazy, right? I first started, grew up in Methuen, Massachusetts, right next to Lawrence, and, loved all sports growing up. I played basketball, obviously, mm, early on and kind of got better and better. And I went to a boarding school where I was lucky enough to play with, other high level talented guys like, Wayne Selden, Alex Oriaki, Nerlens Noel, and a bunch of other guys where we played a high level, schedule. And I was lucky enough to, get a high major offer, not by any high major school close to where I live. So that's the reason why I had to go to Iowa State. And that was pretty much the best decision that I ever made. I was embraced and loved in a community that, their school was everything to them. And it was a amazing journey. And from there on out, it kind of, jolted me into the next phase of my life, which was, my NBA career. And people don't realize is once you finish up in college, nobody really cares what you've done in college when you get to professional level. I had to start all over again. I was cut from the Indiana Pacers after being drafted 50th after 1 year. Played in the G League with the Santa Cruz Warriors and then signed a two-way with Utah. So now I'm traveling all over the country. And then I ended up signing a 3-year deal with Utah. And after that, I signed with Philadelphia. And then from there, I just signed with Cleveland. So it's been a up and down roller coaster, but I wouldn't want it any other way. I've had to earn, every bit of what I've gotten up to this point, and it's made me appreciate the ride even more. You're on mute.
Sorry, my apology. I thought I hit that. So people always talk about like how you said that, people don't remember what you do in college because, every guy from the 15th guy on the best bench is probably was the best player on his college team. So for you, I mean, you were there, I think 3 years with Hoiberg, right? Fred Hoiberg, who
Yeah.
ended up going to the Bulls. When you were with him, how much do you credit, actually getting a guy who went on to coach in the NBA, who played in the NBA to be your college coach? Did that help you get prepared for maybe what to expect in the NBA?
Yeah, I definitely think it really helped. I think the things that Fred was really good at emphasizing were, reads and not just, hey, if I'm running this play, the ball has to get here. It was more or less what you should be looking for when you're out on the court. What do you see? What reads can you make if you see X, Y, or Z? And that kind of really resonated with me. I've never been the most athletic guy on the floor. I've more or less had to use my mind to be able to beat guys. And, with him being such a, brainiac and a genius when it comes to drawing up plays and schemes, we really kind of thought on the same level and it allowed me to grow under him. And, he's played 10 years in the NBA and he's worked in the front office. So he knows what NBA teams are looking for and kind of having his, as a helping hand to show me what I needed to be ready to play at that level was huge for me and huge for my development as a college player. And I don't think many college players get that if you don't have someone that has coached in the NBA. That being said, there's a lot of great coaches out there that do a lot of different things in college that help guys get to the NBA. But this was huge for me, just to have someone that had been there and could show me the ropes of what I needed to do, what I needed to focus on, what things I needed to be looking for on the court to make it to the next level.
Having now seen Fred leave for the NBA and come back to from the NBA and also have, some, I think what he made the playoffs once or twice with the Bulls.
Yeah.
Do you think he was better suited for the NBA now having played in the NBA or better for college?
That's tough. I've always been a firm believer in timing is everything, right? He kind of walked into a Bulls situation where it was, you know, Thibodeau had kind of built it up as, not as high as it could could get, but every team has a life, right? And I've realized that, with every team that I've been on is like they're trying to move pieces. They don't ever think they can win with bringing the same team back. You always got to look to improve, and um, I think Fred can coach at any level. It's just a matter of having the right pieces, the right timing. He's coming from college, where I'm sure NBA guys, they're not watching Iowa State and what Iowa State has done. Um, so then you gotta honestly, win over your guys. And then once you do that, you gotta start winning games. And people know in this league, if you don't win, you don't stay long in this league. So I think he can coach at any level. Um, Obviously, it's just all about timing and situation. And he's doing a great job now at Nebraska. I think they've just beat Purdue, and he's done an amazing job there. So I'm super happy for him.
Now experiencing the two different styles of coaching, do you believe that I've heard the sentiment some people say some guys aren't cut out to be NBA coaches because of the style of coaching? They rather have maybe a bit more of a thumb on things. Do you
Mm,
think that's kind of true? We saw with like John Beeline and going from Michigan to Cleveland, and I don't even think he made it through the season.
yeah. That's all preference. You're going to hear guys complaining all the time about, coaching. At the end of the day, you got to go out there and do what you have to do. I mean, people say they like this and don't like that. And it's, as you've seen today, there's always a coaching carousel, and, you got to get out there and you have the ball in your hands. If you're given the opportunity, you have to make the most of that. It's not on the coach. That's something that I've always tried to really bank on is like if I'm out there getting the opportunity, I need to take full advantage of that. And if I'm not getting opportunity, then what am I doing to make sure that I'm letting it be known that I'm ready and prepared when I do have an opportunity? So it's all on the players. I mean, there's a variety of different coaching styles that clearly work, right? Not only one coaching style has won championships. So I think it's all about what you're going to do as a player. There's great coaches that are very lenient and laid back, and there's great coaches that are really hands-on and diligent. Um, it's all about the guys that you have that are out there playing, and if they're willing to go out there and lay it all out on the line, night in and night out.
Now, going back to you were a guy that people now think of you, George, sharpshooter, guy who's always been there, been able to hit it at a high clip. But people don't remember back in college, you were kind of a secondary playmaker. I mean, what, like 4 assists a night at one point? Like you,
Yeah.
you had some passing chops. You can put the rock on the floor. How hard was it to change? Like a lot your game to make it in the NBA, like you said, going from the Pacers two-way, getting that 3-year deal, having to realize shit, I can't be that guy anymore. I got to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, I had to completely change my game, right? I had to, make sure that I was making corner threes and not letting my guy score on me. Whereas in college, I was allowed to bring the ball up, spin dribble, pump fake, pass, get the ball back, be in the lane, post up, and in the NBA, that wasn't the case at all. And I think it just was humbling. And a lot of people aren't willing to be humbled, right? They're like, this is my game. You're not letting me play my game. Well, they're not here to make amends for your game. They're here to win games. So I had to figure out what ways I could be effective to stay on the court, and making 3-point shots has been the one that's, kept me in the league. And that's what I try to do night in and night out, is shoot at an elite level. Um, and obviously playmaking when people take away my shot. Uh, but with that being said, it was tough at first, because when I was in Indiana, I didn't know that I would have to change my game. I just was constantly like, when am I going to get my shot to do what I do? And then you slowly realize, if I want to stay longer and continue to have this job, I better start, finding ways to be effective and stay on the court and not worry about my game, worry about what I can do to help the team win.
So for you, when you did that, it led to you getting that deal with the Jazz. How hard was it though for, you play a couple years with the Jazz, you build that up, then you get that deal with the Sixers. You have a good year the first year, but then the second year you kind of, you get less minutes. How did it feel? You spent the last year building up to have to, take a step back at, when you're starting to reach your prime. How did that feel?
Yeah, I mean, obviously in your own mind, you're thinking like, oh, this is a contract year, I want to continue to grow and build. But at the end of the day, like if you do get less minutes, you have to make the most of your opportunity with what you're given, and I think that's holds true to everybody in the league. Whatever opportunity you're given, you need to show what you can do in that minimal amount of time or maximum amount of time, just because there's 29 other teams watching, not just your own team. So you could be doing something that another team likes and they could offer you more minutes or more money or so my advice to anybody that's going through that is, keep building, stacking great days on top of great days. And, you're not going to have a great day every single day, but just keep pushing through. I mean, obviously, in the situation in Philly, we added more talent and I had to accept, sort of the same role, but with less minutes. And if I made shots, I would continue to play. And if I didn't, then, I'd have to find my other ways to be effective. With that being said, we had, you know, four potential max guys. You had Joel, Tobias, Tyrese, and James Harden, and then we brought in DeAnthony Melton. And then you got to make time for all the other guys that were, on the bench, PJ Tucker. So, it was it was definitely a learning experience for me, and I'm so happy that I got to go through it, especially for a legendary coach like Doc Rivers, right? For someone like that who was I grew up in Boston, watching him coach the Celtics, and to have him, mentor me and really guide me into the next phase of my career was super special, and I'll never forget those moments that I had in Philly because I enjoyed every single second of it.
What was your experience with Doc Rivers? I know he's a colorful guy, and everyone has mixed opinions depending on how your experience was with him. How was that going in Philadelphia and, with those championship expectations?
Yeah, no, it was great. He really gave me an opportunity to grow and flourish and expand my game, whether if that was, continue to play make or putting the ball on the floor to go score at the rim. He really, helped me, tremendously. And I'm super thankful for that because, without that belief and that opportunity, the next phase of my career may not have been able, to happen. So my experience was awesome with him. Obviously, there's a lot of flack and slander on our team because we didn't make it past the second round. But, injuries are a real thing in the NBA. We never got to have a really healthy Joel Embiid. And obviously we had an opportunity to close it out at home and we didn't do that. And that's on us as players. We could have been better, but such is life. Things happen and you got to continue to grow and move on. But that doesn't, negate the fact that, he was a great coach for us and what we had going on.
What's something that you think people don't talk about, but is one of the strengths of Doc as a coach? Is there something you're like, damn, he was really good at teaching me this or something?
Yeah, I mean, he's an extremely, extremely smart basketball coach and an extremely, extremely good motivator. The way he can motivate a group, I don't care who it is in that locker room, you're going to be motivated to go out there and play. And he's always going to be putting you in positions to win. That's one thing that's for sure is you're always going to be prepared to go out there and have the best game plan to win and motivated. That's for sure. I mean, if he's talking, you're listening.
How did it feel to go from a situation like that where you had Doc Rivers championship aspirations, you played with the MVP to, I mean, nothing against Cleveland or anything, but they're still a playoff team, but it's kind of a different situation you're going into with, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. How's that differ? And especially
You know,
also,
the only thing I would say that's different is like we still have championship aspirations. We're just younger, where I was an older team when I was with the Sixers, and we're just a younger team here in Cleveland. I think the guys are, extremely talented. Obviously, Joel Embiid's an MVP candidate, right? So, obviously you don't come across those every single team, but at the same time, you know, we have talented guys. We've done a good job of battling through injuries this year. Right now, we're fourth in the East, missing Darius and Evan for the last 2 months. So I think it's been, remarkable what we've been able to do and show the depth of this team and how talented we really are. And as far as like it being a tough change? I don't think it was at all. It's actually been exciting and rejuvenating to be around young guys that are hungry and thirsty to win and bring a championship back home to Cleveland.
How did you end up choosing Cleveland, and was there any other place that you had given thought or was pursuing you when you were in free agency this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple teams that pursued me, but obviously the opportunity to play back with Donovan, which I had played alongside him in Utah, and then obviously to play alongside other young, talented pieces. I wanted to be a part of something that had a chance to win for a long time. And you look at the age and the progression of our young talent here. It feels like we're going to be winning here for a long time. So I'm super excited to be a part of that, and the fact that we have opportunities to continue to grow here and win.
Playing with younger guys, do you feel that, being the veteran in the room, sometimes it's a kind of different feeling than when you were per se on an older team like that Sixer squad? It's kind of now you're maybe more of a leader than you were in the past.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique situation, right? You go from being someone that is, looking up to veterans to being the veteran. Besides Tristan, I'm probably the oldest one, on the team. And you have to act as such. There's some things that you're not allowed to get away with, whether it's childish things that you're doing and shoot around or practice. You kind of got to hold yourself to a higher standard, because not only are people listening to you, they're also following your lead with your actions. Um, so I think it's a pretty unique situation, but it's a learning experience for me, and I think it's going to continue to help me, moving forward in my career. And I love helping these young guys, whatever anything that they need um, to help this team win, I'm willing to do. And like I said, I'm extremely excited to be a part of, a team that has such a young core group that's going to be good for a long time. And if I have to be looked at as the OG or the veteran, I'll take it.
So I know you're still a young man, you're just 30, but your age, you're kind of in that middle age where like social media came like kind of like obviously came around in your lifetime, but it's not like the guys who are younger than you where they grew up with YouTube,
Yeah.
watching streamers, seeing influencers. And I've talked to other former NBA players, and they said they're one of the biggest concerns they have is the amount of social media that goes on like in practice or even at the youth high school level where kids are, instead of dribbling or practicing, the first thing they do when they walk in, they're, pulling out their phone and taking a picture of them with the ball or something. Do you see that maybe as a concern or a distraction that's affecting the youth?
Uh, you know, I try to let people do their own thing, because sometimes it works for some people and sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't really work for me. I hate doing the whole cell phone selfie with the basketball or telling people I just worked out, because that's not what it's about. I've always been a firm believer what's done in the dark will show in the light. I'm going to put my work in. I don't need to tell everybody that I'm putting work in. But to some extent, I do agree. It is hurting the youth. Is I don't want to see the purity of this game ever diminish because people are doing it for views of personal accolades, rather than to go out there and continue to compete and win championships and just flat out win, rather than just see how many clicks or views they can get on social media.
To go with that, do you think a big problem? Because I agree that today's league is the most skilled it has ever been, but something that I've heard other players agree with me is that the level of basketball IQ has not grown with the skill level, as guys aren't coming prepared, knowing how, like you said, how to read defenses or offenses, what to what reads they should make, or types of what's a horn set or the different types of motion offense. You can see it with fans; they don't even know, but what's your thoughts on that with the level of basketball IQ? Do you think it's not growing the way that it should be?
Well, the league is real young, right? We have kids coming from OTE. I forget the other group that
G League Ignite, you got
yeah, Ignite, yeah.
NBL.
Yeah, all where they're coming from these professional leagues and coming in, and the NBA is the NBA. Like, there's no real simulation for it besides like the G League. Um, so it's understandable. Learning takes time, right? And I hate when people say like the learning isn't catching up with the age, or the age isn't catching up with the learning. Just for the simple fact is, some guys are going to get it and some guys are never going to get it. And if you don't get it soon enough, you'll be out. And if you do, you'll stay in for a long time. There's nothing more rewarding than seeing someone who's athletically gifted, has been in the league, for since a young age, and then it clicks for them because then it all comes together, and that's when you have, all stars, superstars, generational talents, and that's super rewarding. Obviously, you know, there's phenomenal role players that it took them a little while to get it to click, but I think at the end of the day, the league is in a great space. Obviously, basketball IQ is one thing, but when you have natural talent, sometimes that can make up for the lack of basketball IQ.
Do you think that with the league being so young, that with a bunch of the old coaches like Coach K, you're seeing what's called what is Jay Wright and Villanova, a lot of these old OGs are leaving the game, and obviously time is always going to come for people. But do you think there's a different style of coaching, or like maybe guys aren't being prepared enough for the NBA or even for college coming out of high school?
I don't know because when you're in college, it's it's totally different than the NBA, right? And once you're done with college, it's like you're groomed to be great in college, right? And once you have that opportunity to get out and be a pro, it's all on you. And a lot of guys take a jump, and that 3, 4, or 5 months that they have from the end of their college season to the draft, you know, and summer league, they make a huge jump because it's, on them, and they've done a great job of working out, on their own personal things that they need to get better at. And other times it's like college was the best thing for some guys because they were made to work out, because college teams are forced to work out and condition and skill development. So, that's a tough question. You listed off, obviously Coach Krzyzewski's a great coach. He's had numerous and tons of pros since he's been at Duke. And Jay Wright did the same, and he's won national championships, and he's coached Team USA. Both of them have. I just think it's a new crop of coaches coming in, and there's going to be, the new Jim Boeheim's. There's going to be the new um, Mike Krzyzewski's. There's going to be the new Jay Wrights. There's going to be the new Roy Williams. There's going to be a new Bill Self. Like the turnover is happening, and we're just here in the middle of it. I don't think there's anything to take away from that. It's just like there's new crop of talent coming in, and there's a new crop of coaches that are going to flourish and be those next guys to step into their footsteps.
So for you, seeing where the NBA is at, are you like the way that it's going, that there's a lot more parity with the second tax apron? Do you think a lot more people are going to see a lot more different, because we've over the last decade we saw the Warriors and Cavs go to the finals every year? Do you think, seeing how I guess there's more parity in the league, that it's up for grabs more than it ever has been?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at last year, Milwaukee was number one, and they lost to the Heat, and the Heat were like, all right, well, what are we doing here? And they're kind of, figuring out, even now. And then you go over to the West Coast. You have Sacramento, Golden State. New Orleans is a team to watch out for. Obviously, you have Denver, and then OKC is coming along, and Minnesota's another team. So, it's all up for grabs, and the regular season is totally different than the playoffs. So once you make the playoffs, it's totally different basketball, and it's intense, and every possession matters. During the regular season, obviously, there's so many games, and sometimes there's injuries and guys miss and different things like that. But I do think it is open and up for grabs. There's a multitude and handful of teams that have an opportunity to win a championship this year.
For you, seeing like all the players in the league, who's somebody that when you look at the calendar and you see their team, you're not stoked because you're gonna have to guard someone? Like, who's the hardest person you've had to guard, or you just hate having that matchup?
I think, whenever you see, LeBron, Giannis, Luca, Joel, Tatum, Brown, even Shea Gilgeous-Alexander at this point, Jokic. There's just so many stars and talented players on this in this league right now that 1 through 10 on each side of you know there's someone where you're like, damn, they could give us a lot of problems. There's just so many talented players, and I think the league's in a really good spot with the young talent that they have, and then the older guys that are continuing to hold on.
Growing up, you said you're from, Massachusetts. Who was your top five just of all time that you said, hey, these are my five guys? Who would you say? I assume there's got to be a Celtic in there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Larry Bird's in my top five, but obviously, LeBron, Kobe, MJ, in no particular order, and Bird, and then obviously, you know, Kareem. I think there's no question. There that was my my top five. Growing up, simply because I got to see the tail end of Kobe Bryant's career, and I got to see the start and middle, and now I'm seeing the end towards the end of LeBron James's career, and I got to see the tail end of Michael Jordan's. And I didn't get to see much of Larry Bird, but the stories that you hear growing up in Boston are remarkable. And then you see some of the footage that has leaked on, or not leaked on YouTube, but been on YouTube, which is the great thing about social media. And he was phenomenal.
My dad went to school at Bentley, so in the 80s.
Oh,
So
nice. There
my
we
dad
go.
raised me telling me that Larry Bird was the great, besides Magic Johnson, was like the two greatest things he'd ever seen.
That's
Um, for you, when you look at how, with the play-in tournament, the in-season tournament, how do you feel about, I know they're not gimmicks, but I'm going to use the word gimmick to describe it, that the NBA is trying to, do you think it's trying to do to get more engagement, but do you feel like it's more to get the fans engaged or the players engaged?
I don't know. The in season tournament was like intense, and it was like a good feeling because it's like the season does get long, right? You start the season, you're like, wow, we have a long way to go to get to like games that like everybody's kind of feeling each other out in the beginning. You have a lot of time to make up a lot of ground, if anything. But the in season tournament, that's for real money and for a championship. And I think the coolest part is that you know you can do something in the NBA, or they created something to make it that these games got really competitive and intense, so early in the season, and allowed for teams to compete for something. And obviously it helped with the viewership, but guys were motivated to play in these games, to bring home a championship in these games.
For you, when you played in those games, was it like, do you think was the first couple games maybe a little weird? Like how did that go? Like the being in the
Well, the first
inaugural.
one, I don't think anybody really understood, like, how big it was going to be. And then after you realize, like, where the positioning was, and, like, you only had 3 other games to make it up, people were like, okay, like, let's go. And I think next year, people are really going to understand the points stuff, the positioning of
Mhm.
you winning and having 2 road games and 2 home games, and you want to take full advantage of that. So, I'm excited, especially to see how it is next year. That should be really exciting.
Two-part question. First off, as a fan, as someone who like follows the NBA religiously, I found it kind of like confusing to follow along because they didn't do a good job of providing like how the scoring went and like how like the brackets, like where it went. Because you remember you had that game with the Boston Celtics, and I forget the other one where they had to run up the score to
Yeah.
like. So what's something you would first off, did you guys have, was it confusing for the players to understand how it worked? And second off, what's something you would change or to improve the in-season tournament? Would you do?
I mean, I would almost want to make it to like 6 games, just because it was just super intense. Maybe 3 or 4 week stretch of like sometimes you have two, in season tournament games a week. Um, but at the same time, I I felt like I had a pretty good understanding of what was going on. They explained it to us. Obviously, the point differential, a lot of people don't understand that, and some people that don't get it, because there's people that when I grew up with in AAU tournaments where point differential was a thing, and they didn't
Mhm.
understand it then. So so maybe I don't know. Do you change that so when teams are down 20, they're not having to you know go up against other teams starting 5 because they need to get it up to 35 because of point differential. I don't know, but I think as a good foundation, the in-season tournament was a huge success, and I would love to continue to see it and be a part of it.
How was it playing on those courts? Was it, would
Yeah.
you get rid of those courts?
No, I think it adds an element where people are turning on the TV to see it, and I think it's pretty cool, and it adds a flair, and I think, the league needed that, especially at a time early on in the season where there was so much basketball to be played and the playoffs are such a long way away that these intense games are good.
Was there any truth to the rumors floating around that there was kind of like the some of the courts, the ball didn't bounce right, or like the paint was thicker, like some people weren't fan that the courts had defects on them?
Yeah, I only got to play on two of them, right? I played in Philly and I played in Indiana. So I didn't, other than that, those two were fine. So the Indiana's court looked like the Cookie Monster, but it was a really cool experience, and I think they should continue to grow it and do it. They've built a good foundation with the in-season tournament.
Do you think the money was more of a motivator for the players, or the to raise a banner?
I think for anybody in the first year when there's no history behind it, obviously, money is going to be a motivating thing for everybody, and along with the playoff bonus that we get when you win a NBA championship. So, that's always a factor, but I think guys generally want to win.
What was your thoughts on the Lakers raising a banner? I saw a bunch of people giving them crap over it. Would you
Yeah, I mean they won a championship. I mean they should be allowed to do what they're going to do because in 20 years from now, when this thing becomes a big deal, like they should be able to say that they won the first one.
for you, the way that you look the league, and I know basketball is a game of runs. What do you think's the toughest part about being, a basketball player in the midst of a season, especially with trade deadline going around, that the media fans don't really think about?
That's a tough question because fans probably think about the trade deadline and all that stuff more than we do. Unless your name's being talked about and
Mm.
tossed in rumors, you really just got to be a professional, right? It's not personal, it's business. And obviously some people get it, make it personal, and that's when your feelings get hurt. This is a job, and we all knew what we signed up for when we walked into the NBA. Trades are possible, getting cut is possible, but that's the risk you're willing to take to be able to show up and work and in the best league in the world. Obviously, you know, if your team is losing, your team might look to shake things up and do different things, and that's part of the job. But at the end of the day, you got to be a professional, show up and play your play your hardest and do what you do, and let the chips fall as they may.
So, with that being said, how is it playing with guys of different backgrounds? You've played with Joe Ingles, Bojan Bogdanovic. I'm trying to think of other guys, but from overseas, how's it to see those guys come over with completely different upbringings of basketball, to see how they play? Is it kind of cool to see the different, skills?
Yeah, it's honestly it's amazing. It's super cool to see all the different backgrounds that these guys have, all the different styles of play, and just the talent all over the world. Not just from them, but anybody that comes from outside of the US. There's just so much talent in the NBA right now that's brought in from all over the world, and it's amazing to see.
Is there a certain skill that you think foreign players, or foreign, like, players who come from overseas, are maybe better at, or more like something that you're like, oh, consistently they're like that, they have this that Americans don't?
I would say, for the most part, I think everyone would say that, foreign players have a really high basketball IQ, and that they've been some of them have been professional since they're 10 years old. So, they had a while to work at this. While we're, still playing on the playground in the United States. Not to say that, we're at a disadvantage, but at the same time, everywhere basketball is taught differently. And the fact that we can all bring it together in the United States, I think is really cool, especially to suit up for the best league in the world.
So I won't hold you much longer, but my question is when you guys gear up for this final stretch, heading into the playoffs, and I know, luck, opportunity, like I said earlier, it's a game of runs. How does a team, on compared to all the squads, Utah, you had Quinn Snyder last year, Doc Rivers, now with JB Bickerstaff, how does it, how do you guys get into that headspace knowing you're going to be in the playoffs, but to take it to that next level?
Yeah, I mean, you got to take it one game at a time, right? We just finished our 41st game. We're halfway through the year. And I think these guys know with, their playoff experience last year, playoff experience is real. Is once you get there, you're like, oh, this is how it is. Like, this is how intense it is. Everything matters. This is the physicality. Obviously, in Utah was my first experience in the playoffs. Then I had two opportunities in Philly, and I'm looking forward to mine here in Cleveland, but I think these guys here realize, what needs to happen and what intensity they need to bring on a night in, night out basis to continue to grow and win um, in the playoffs.
That makes sense. And I know, like you said, day at a time is like all you can do, because thinking
Right.
ahead is, it's never does any
You get
well.
tripped up if you start thinking too far ahead.
So, and I don't, with the All-Star weekend around the corner, and I know last year you expressed wanting to be in the 3-point contest. Do you still have the same hopes to be able to
Yeah,
showcase that?
yeah, I would love to be in the 3-point contest, but at the end of the day, like I'm not going to be kicking and screaming if I don't. It's a cool thing that the NBA does, and it's awesome. But at the same time, if I don't get picked, I will be watching and supporting. It's super cool what they do. They've done a great job, and they're constantly mixing it up. So it's always entertaining.
Do players watch All-Star weekend, or are you guys
I think
vacationing?
it's 50-50. Some do, some don't. I usually go home and relax, so I'll probably turn it on and check it out.
And what's one thing you would tell high school players, or college player, or the younger version of you, that a piece of advice that you didn't know when you were younger?
I think the biggest thing is, if you want something bad enough, continue to show up every single day and just work. Showing up is half the battle. And it takes zero skill to work hard. Um, so if I could tell my younger self that's the main thing that I would say. And there's gonna be tough days. There's gonna be days where you feel like you're not getting better. There's gonna be days where you want to quit and you're not sure that this is for you, but just continue to push through because I promise you, once you make it through, it's totally worth it.
And for you, what's one thing you learned in the NBA that you were surprised, you were like, that you were happy you learned, or something that you just didn't never thought about that was kind of like,
I think the biggest thing for me was routine. The season is so long that like whether if I'm feeling good or not feeling good or feeling great, I'm gonna stick to that routine. And over the course of time, you continue to grow and be better as the year goes on. And that's that's how it has to be, because if you go with the ebbs and flows of the emotions of this long season, you'll eventually, stop working or then want to work too hard. And you got to be consistent throughout the whole year with your work and preparation.
and my final question is, what do you want George Niang to be synonymous with? What do you want people to think of?
A winner. I think that's the biggest thing, and that's always been is I want to be looked at as a winner, nothing less. You know, I just want to be a winner.
Well said, man. And I thank you, George. Thank you for taking your time out of your day
Absolutely.
and doing this for me. And hey, best of luck for the rest of the season. Hey, sorry about that Boston Celtics question. I'll cut that out. I kind
No, you're good.
of in my head, I was like, oh yeah, can't ask that under contract. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, you're good. Don't
Hey,
worry. I appreciate you.
if you're at the All-Star weekend for 3-point shooting contest, I'll see you there. I'll be rooting for
There
you,
we
man.
go, brother. Tell
All
my
right.
guy Tyrese Halliburton hello from me.
Will do, man. Will do. Take care, man.
Brother.
Much love.
Later.
Godspeed.